Hello, everyone, and welcome to Global Gurus, where every Friday we explore stories of international business and speak with industry leaders operating around the world. I'm your host, Philip Auerbach of Auerbach International. Thank you for joining us. We start each broadcast with the running segment called Faux Pas Fridays, where we explore a funny blooper or mistranslation that does not quite convey the professional image that your organization should project or wants to project. So as an example, a sign in a Hong Kong dentist's office said in English, very simply, teeth extracted by the latest Methodists. So with that, today's guest is Rachel Paling, and she is an international businesswoman who transforms teachers worldwide with professional coaching and the added dimension of neuroscience and neuropsychology. She has trained nearly 1,200 neuro-language coaches in over 70 countries, and now she is developing Neuroheart Education for all educators. So please welcome Rachel Paling.
Hello,
Rachel. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. I'm delighted to have you. So before we begin, your wonderful introduction has quite a few words with neuro in it: neuroscience, neuropsychology, neurolanguage. Could you please let us know what all of that means for those of us who don't speak neuro?
Yes, there are quite a few there. Well, definitely fascinated with the brain, the learning process, and how we can enhance the learning process as educators. And the one thing I'm focused on is really bringing in the research from the neuroscience, from the neuropsychology, from emotional intelligence into the learning process itself, and also that educators can live the science. So it's not just about regurgitating and telling everybody about the research. It's actually about what can we do to live it, to manifest it, to make it happen. We could say that what can we do to make the process extremely brain friendly, and that we get the added impacts of optimized learning. And on the one side, you have neuro-language coaching, which is created for language teachers and language professionals. And on the other side, I've created the Neuroheart Education, which is for all other educators, whether maths, company trainers, biology, whatever. So that's a little bit about all the neuros there.
That's fascinating. Thank you. And I saw that you've got a neuro-language section as well on your website. Is that correct?
That's right. So that's the one that I was saying about for the language educators. And this is something that I started in 2012. So I'm celebrating 10 years this year. And we did the pilot with 12 language teachers back then. And now there are nearly 1,200 all across the world in over 70 countries. Wow. All different languages, all different language combinations. It's phenomenal. I'm very grateful to all of them.
That's outstanding. Incredible. Well, from your accent, Americans can tell that you're British and you live in Spain, which is wonderful. And I know you've also lived in, is it France and Italy and Germany, if I'm not mistaken? That's right. So perhaps you could tell us a bit before we dive in a bit more, just to tell us a bit more about your background and how you grew up and how you gained your global experience.
Well, I have to say, firstly, I'm grateful to my parents because my father had a travel agency when I was a little baby. And in those first 17 years of my life, we would always come to a place south of Barcelona called Sitges. And that's where he would bring the people on holiday. And maybe 3-4 times a year, we as a family would be coming over. So I think I was exposed to Spain already as a baby. And that seems to have transformed my heart. So I would say I'm kind of Spanish English. I do think I'm a little bit of a mix there. And at the age of 17, I actually stayed in Spain. I got married very early at the age of 18 to a Spaniard. So I became fully bilingual, integrated into the life here. And fascinatingly, you know, you and I were talking about maturity, and I think now I'm at the age in life where I can look back and I can see even that step of coming to live in Spain at the age of 17, just how impacting it was on being a teacher, being an educator, developing through life with different cultures, being able to manage people, connecting with different languages. And through life, you know, I think I've had the gift of being able to live in different countries like Italy, France, Germany, Spain, and in Catalonia as well. So I've been exposed to languages naturally. It hasn't been something that I ever sat down and thought, I want to be a polyglot. No, it really did come
Just
with the gift of life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Marvelous. And that sort of leads to other questions about, well, let's come back to that in a moment, but what does international business mean to you? You've obviously done it, but for example, if a person sells a book overseas, is that really international business, or do you see it in a very different way?
I see it in a very different way, because I think if we use the term business, and if we are running a business, I think it's a little bit different to being what we would say in England, a sole trader. So a person with maybe their persona as a sole trader, selling a book, etc. Now, if you've got an enterprise behind that book, then I would say, you know, we're looking at more of a vehicle, you know, we would say a legal vehicle to run that business from. So for me, international business means that there is that enterprise or that business in whatever shape or form, and that it is dealing with other countries, multiple countries on various levels. So yes, that word international, I think nowadays, Philip, we have to substitute it with global. And even now, what we are experimenting, and my neurolanguage coaches are coming into becoming global edupreneurs. So we're now having educators because of the pandemic, because of what's happened. So many of them now have changed from a local market where they were going down the road to the local company to give training, to actually developing their businesses to be cross-border and worldwide. It's phenomenal.
That is marvelous. That's great. I think it's certainly much more common in Europe than it is in North America, because obviously the countries are so close together, and it obviously fits so perfectly with your background, because you know you now live in Spain, and you know you've been to these other countries and you came early, and so you were exposed at a very early age to knowing and understanding that there are other languages and cultures and how to interact with people in different ways.
Yeah, that's right.
And so as you've launched your ventures, is there one that you feel has been the most successful? And if so, what did you do to make it successful?
Well, I think I'm still in that developing the business stage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first years were I was living in Germany and developing the business from there. So I was also quite local at that point. A lot of local business. Yes, I was traveling in the area of Germany, but little by little, it was about developing with other countries, with other teachers, trainers, educators, and more that expansion has increased. And now we are expanding quite rapidly. And I think I would say it's all in that package of beautiful development, and I'm just so happy, and I'm excited with it. You know, when you see something that you've planted as a seed,
Mm-hmm.
still growing, and it's growing, and it's growing, and now you see the petals are coming out and the flowers are starting to bloom, and it's like, whoa. Yes, I would say I'm still on that road too. And I don't think, Philip, I think the word success is interpreted by everybody differently.
Yes, definitely.
For me, every day is a success. Every day that we have a beautiful day, we have amazing business happening in the background. You've got people learning, people happy with what they're learning and receiving, and then they are going and transmitting this to their learners. For me, that's the most beautiful part of this work, the feedback that we get from the learners. Yeah,
that's very, very true. And of course, the other great reason to be grateful and happy is if we've got our health, and we've got our families, and we've got our relationships and all of that. So that's also part of just feeling successful as a person, naturally.
Absolutely. Yes.
And you had spoken about this a bit earlier, but what did you think, what did you learn, or what did you experience to help you thrive in global business? Are there any lessons from your background?
Definitely, I think the language aspect, being able to communicate in many languages actually helps to understand more how to communicate. Because when we go into different languages, we're going into different cultures, different temperaments, different ways of saying things. And if you're in a negotiation and you get offended because suddenly somebody has spoken very abruptly for your liking, it might actually be just that their language is one of those very direct languages. And if you don't understand that, there can be some misinterpretations that really can lead to stalemates, no negotiation, and really no deal. So I think for me, the language, the living in the different countries has given me that broad outlook. And, through my life, everything that I've learned, everything that I've done has contributed to running this business.
That's marvelous. It's great. Yes, it's really extraordinary how one's background, we pull from so many different elements and influences to create of course, we are the people we are because of all the past experiences we've had, and then we can channel it into our careers, whatever they may be. And what you've done is superb. So yeah, as you know, I run a 30-year-old language translation agency, translating and interpreting, and we do 120 languages. And certainly, as you know from having learned them, that when you learn a new language, you learn a new way of thinking. And as you were saying about abrupt speech, it may be abrupt in that culture, in our culture, but to them, to others, it's perfectly natural. So this gets into cultural differences. Have you ever experienced, since you are so aware of languages and cultures, but have you ever experienced a cultural difficulty, either you or you know of one, that may have jeopardized or doomed a venture? And then how did you adjust to it?
In my particular case, I would say that I've always managed to try to understand. I think for me, sometimes in Germany, right at the beginning when I was sort of trying to understand the language, trying to understand business in Germany. And I have to say, in Germany, there were 20 years ago, and still a little bit nowadays, there are very hierarchical businesses, very much the old type, where a lot of men are in the management. And there were a few run-ins, as a lady, and especially as a business lady. 15 years ago, it wasn't so well, I'm going to say so well accepted in some cases. And of course, I was struggling with the language, and I think that didn't help in some situations. So if I had been a little bit more au fait with the German and a little bit more cultured and cultivated in every aspect over there, maybe I would have handled certain situations better.
That's fascinating. Yes, you're very right that many cultures, such as Germany, the Germans are very hierarchical. And in Asia, of course, the most hierarchical are Japan and Korea. And you know, if one goes into a situation without understanding that, or especially as an American, for example, because the United States was founded on the idea of equality, and
Right.
you know, to escape from, you'll forgive me, but escape from British rule, which was much more about class and hierarchy and well, from Americans' point of view, imposing the rule from the outside as opposed to our deciding it. And so in the United States, this is something I personally very much dislike. But in the United States, people they assume that they should first name you when you meet someone. Hello, this is John, this is Samantha, this is Jill. And you just start immediately. But in other cultures, of course, it's extremely impolite. And one should always say Signora, Signora, Monsieur, Madame, meine Frau, mein Herr, whatever the case may be. And you know, you never use the first name except when you become much more comfortable, familiar, and often until the person gives you permission.
That's right. That's right. And it's fascinating, you know, because the respect that some languages demonstrate just through the language is fascinating. It really is.
Yeah, very much so. And you know, as I'm sure you know, in other language, in English, we have the word you, and that's masculine, feminine, singular, plural. Whereas in other well, certainly European languages, there's always a formal you and an informal you. And sometimes in other languages, there's also a masculine you and a feminine you, and singular and plural. And so it gets, you know, where we use you generally, you have to be very careful distinguishing, of course, in other languages and cultures and how one behaves.
Yes. And Philip, I'm thinking you and I could be here all night in language paradise.
Talking about that, right?
Good.
But let's move on to other things, because they may interest people a bit more. Well, so very similarly, how do you adjust to a market, to a new market or new country, if it doesn't match what you know, if you're plunging into it for the first time?
Definitely with the locals. So I work with local partners. I actually have at the moment 30 teacher trainers in different countries. And I rely heavily on their wisdom, their expertise, and their knowledge of their own countries. Definitely, I cannot know all there is to know. So I really would recommend anybody who is going to go into a country, they need to have local partnership there.
A local what, please?
Local partnership or collaboration. Absolutely. It's essential.
How have you handled the situation where you don't speak the language? Let's say, for example, you want to expand into Poland. I presume you don't speak Polish, or it's not terribly fluent, and you may not know any partners there. What would you do in that case? Do you know?
I would wait until I've got the right contacts. So I would really be waiting for Polish connections to come in. So working with teachers from all over the world, this is how it has developed for me. So I have had those teachers coming in, do my courses, and then they have wanted to really take what we do and develop it in their countries. And I've given them that sort of blessing to say, yes, let's go with it. Let's run with it. And in fact, I do have an amazing business partner in Poland called Katarzyna Ilinska. And she's been with me now for about 7 years. And she's phenomenal. And she's really developed this over there and is continuing to develop it. So again, I would say, it's more about being patient and allowing maybe those countries to come to us, and then finding the right partners that are going to develop it with us.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's certainly a very valid model that a lot of people follow.
Yeah.
If you had the chance to tell your past self some advice from your current self, what do you think you would tell yourself?
Oh, my past self. Actually, can I change the question?
Sure, please. Yeah.
If my current self could go back to my past self, I would definitely have loved, as a child, as a teenager, to know much more about my brain.
Your brain, fascinating.
Yes, how to handle it, how to manage it, how to really optimize, learning or mood or whatever. I really wish, Philip, that we could get this information to children nowadays, because we have this information now. Whereas when I grew up, you grew up, nobody spoke about the brain. It was kind of, we all had one, we all have one, but
yes,
never spoken about.
Well, except for psychiatrists, perhaps, but
and
yes.
Then there was something wrong with you.
Right, exactly.
But no, nowadays, really, I would go back to my young Rachel,
right,
and I would start explaining to her, this is why you're upset here, or this is what you could do here, and this is what's happening here, and this is how you can manage yourself here. And absolutely, how life would be so different knowing how to manage and optimize the brain throughout.
That's fascinating. And you were right in rephrasing the question, because my brain got it wrong. So I'm glad that your brain was smarter than mine. That's excellent.
Really? Okay. Well, no, it could be my past self giving me some sort of message for now. It could be.
It could be, right? So tell me about, I guess, life beyond business. Is there something beyond business that gets you very excited?
Yes, there is. And over the last years, I have become a very avid paddleboarder.
I'm sorry, say it again. Paddleboarder.
Yes, I love paddleboarding. I've got my own paddleboard now. I'm the proud owner of a paddleboard, and I live next to the sea. So my paddleboard has a little place by the sea, and whenever I can, I'm a little bit like an addict. I kind of get up at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning to go down to the sea, and I'm waiting for that change in the weather to really get down to my paddleboard. And over the last years, I have to say as well that I've really stepped up my sport, and I've been swimming a lot right through the pandemic. One of the only things that we could do, the swimming pools were open most of the time here in Spain. And so I became addicted to swimming. So every week, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week, I go swimming, go to the gym, go to Zumba, love dancing as well. Definitely sports, movement. And in the summer, well, in Spain, it's kind of like a long summer. Right. So it's kind of like from March to November, I'm on my paddleboard.
That's wonderful. And you're illustrating another part of doing business globally, which I think is flexibility, that you have to go with the flow, and and you can't be very rigid.
Philip, absolutely. And, I really equate this to the paddleboard. You have to learn to ride the surf.
Yes, correct.
And it's really the equilibrium that, one day the sea's going to be rough, one day it's going to be calm. And running a business is precisely that. And we have to be so flexible. You've had this 30-year business, which is phenomenal. And that, there's going to be times when it's stormy, there's going to be times when it's calm, but we have to stay solid on that board and keep that equanimity. This is my favorite word. The equanimity has to be there.
That's wonderful. Yeah. There's an expression, well, comparing Asians or Easterners with Westerners. Westerners are like an oak tree, very rooted and very solid. And Easterners, Asians, are more like bamboo. They sway with the wind, and they're very flexible in that way.
Yes, beautiful image there, definitely.
So before we close, is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I guess I just want to share that I am passionate about changing education, but not me changing it, but the collective of educators. I do think that we are in a shift, and I think many know that, they feel it. Many teachers are intuitively shifting, and I think as well, Philip, I'd love to just take a second to acknowledge and recognize and really say to teachers worldwide, what they've done in the last 2 years has been miraculous. We speak about the medical profession, we speak about so many others. Teachers are not spoken enough about.
That's true. And their resiliency to make it all work.
Yes.
Or to do the best they can to make it all work.
That's right. And I know that we are coming into this new era, which for me is the Neuroheart Education area. We're taking neuroeducation one step beyond, because we're going to be bringing in the heart. We're bringing in the holistic human, the holistic approach, and we're learning to adapt. And here I'm going to go back to the bamboo, Philip. We as educators have to become like the bamboo. We have to sway and bend with our learners instead of the learners having to adapt to us. Very true,
very true. Well, we need to convey that to many ministers of education worldwide, because education systems are not built that way.
I hope, honestly, Philip, I think the teachers will change the systems.
I hope so.
We are going to change the systems, definitely.
That's fantastic, because in most ways, schools definitely need changing around the world. So.
Little by little, we're getting there.
We did it. That's absolutely correct. Well, thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a superb pleasure gaining your insights and learning about your business and your perspectives and points of view, and ways that other people can learn and adapt for global business based on some of your wonderful experiences.
Thank you, Philip. Delighted to be here, and definitely a lot of warm wishes to all the listeners out there.
Thank you. So this has been Philip Auerbach. Please join us again next Friday for another edition of Global Gurus and their stories on international business. Okay, so I think, can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay, so I think the recording has stopped. I didn't see a stop
it's still recording.
Okay, then assign and leave. Okay, let's log back in, because I don't see a stop record button here, which is most annoying.
On the bottom, where if you see share screen.
Share screen, yes.
And next to it, you've got the record.
But no, I've got reactions, so I don't have my record button anymore.
Ooh.
It's disappeared, so that's why.
And top left, can you see, does it say recording up there?
Oh, recording, yes, thank you. Okay, stop recording. Maybe that's